The massive crystal dome of Nexus Prime sparkled with thousands of lights as beings from across the galaxy gathered for the most important meeting in 1,000 years. Ships of every shape and size filled the space around the planet. Some looked like flowing metal, others like living trees, and a few seemed to be made of pure light itself. Inside the Great Hall, Ambassador Lee Minho sat alone in the smallest section of the entire building. His chair was pushed into a corner, where the lighting was dim and the air recycling systems made too much noise. Around him, creatures with tentacles, wings, and bodies made of crystal talked in voices that sounded like music, thunder, and wind chimes. Lee watched as the Zephyr Chancellor rose from his golden throne. The being was 12 feet tall, with skin that changed colors like an oil spill. When he spoke, his voice boomed across the hall like a storm. "We gather today to discuss the requests of all member species," the Chancellor announced, "but first, we must address the amusing petition from the small planet called Earth." Laughter filled the dome. It came from creatures with too many eyes, beings made of gas, and robots older than human civilization. Lee felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face calm. A creature that looked like a walking diamond stepped forward. Its voice rang like breaking glass. "The humans want mining rights in the outer spiral. These creatures have only been in space for 200 years. My people have bathroom fixtures older than their entire space program." More laughter echoed. Through the hall, a blob-like creature gurgled. "They still fight wars with chemical explosives. How primitive." Lee stood up slowly. "Honored council members, humanity has proven its worth through silence." The Chancellor's colors flashed angry red. "Your species will speak when spoken to. You are here as observers, nothing more." A being that looked like a living tree swayed as it spoke. "Earth's request is denied. Furthermore, we reduced their current territorial claims by 40%. This better reflects their actual importance in galactic affairs." The vote happened so fast, Lee barely had time to process it. Green lights filled the dome as species after species after species agreed to strip away nearly half of humanity's space. Only a few red lights flickered in the darkness, and Lee noticed they came from the newest and smallest species in the council. "The motion passes," the Chancellor declared. "Earth will be notified of the new boundaries within one standard galactic week." Lee remained standing as the council moved on to other business. A species that looked like floating jellyfish received approval for expansion into 3 new star systems. A race of metal beings got exclusive rights to mine an entire asteroid belt. The smallest request was 10 times larger than what humanity had asked for. As the session continued, Lee pulled out a small device that looked like an ordinary communication tablet. His fingers moved in a pattern that seemed random, but each tap sent a coded signal racing through subspace toward Earth. The message was simple, but carried enormous weight. "Protocol 7. They have forgotten who we are." The Chancellor noticed. Lee still standing. "Human, you may leave. Your business here is concluded." Lee bowed politely. "Of course, honored Chancellor, thank you for your time and consideration." As he walked toward the exit, conversations followed him. A creature with too many arms whispered to its neighbor, "I almost feel sorry for them. They look so disappointed." Another, being this one covered in scales, replied, "They will learn to accept their place. The young always do." Lee passed by a group of metal beings discussing trade routes. One noticed him and spoke in electronic tones. "Perhaps we should offer them a consolation prize. Maybe mining rights to one small moon." "Too generous," another replied. "They need to understand the natural order. Old species lead, young species follow." Near the exit, Lee overheard a conversation that made him pause. 2 gas-based beings were talking about Earth's military capabilities. "Their weapons are laughably primitive," one said in a voice like wind through caves. "Chemical rockets and metal projectiles. My grandchildren's toys are more advanced. They have never fought a real war," the other agreed, "just small conflicts on their tiny planet. They know nothing of galactic combat." Lee smiled for the first time that day. He continued walking, but his step was lighter now. Outside the dome, he climbed into his small ship. Compared to the vessels around him, it looked like a metal box with engines attached. Other ships curved, like living things, or seemed to bend space around them. The human ship looked primitive, industrial, an ugly dot. As Lee prepared to leave, his communication system crackled to life. It was a message from the Zephyrian Chancellor. "Human Ambassador, do not take this decision personally. In a few thousand years, when your species has matured, perhaps you can apply again. Until then, be content with what you have been given." Lee activated his response channel. "Of course, honored Chancellor, humanity understands its place in the galaxy." But as his ship turned toward Earth, Lee's smile grew wider. The Council had made their decision based on what they thought they knew about humanity. They saw a young species with primitive technology and assumed they understood everything about human nature. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The journey home would take 6 days. By the time Lee arrived on Earth, the galaxy would already be beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their age, it was their refusal to accept that anything was impossible. Director Park Jin-woo stood in the underground command center beneath Geneva, watching the holographic display show Earth's reduced territories. The red lines marking humanity's new boundaries cut through star systems where human colonies had lived for generations. Around the circular table, representatives from every nation on Earth sat in stunned silence. They took the Kepler mining stations, whispered the representative from Japan. 15,000 workers will have to evacuate. The agricultural worlds in Sector 7 are gone too, added the woman from Brazil. Those farms feed half our outer colonies. Park raised his hand for silence. The room fell quiet except for the hum of computers processing data from across human space. The Galactic Council has made a mistake, he said calmly. They judge us by their own standards and assume we think like they do. The man from Russia leaned forward. What do you mean? They see our short lifespans and think we are impulsive. They see our young civilization and believe we are naive. They look at our simple technology and assume we are primitive. Park's eyes moved around the table. They have never encountered a species that learned to survive by being underestimated. The woman from China frowned. But their fleets are massive. Their weapons can destroy entire planets. How can we possibly? We do not fight them on their terms, Park interrupted. We fight them on ours. Within hours, orders flowed across Earth's communication networks. In the frozen wastes of Antarctica, ice began melting around structures that had been hidden for decades. Beneath the Sahara Desert, sand fell away from massive doors that opened for the first time in 50 years. In the depths of Earth's oceans, something large began moving toward the surface. Commander Kim Taeman received his orders while inspecting the lunar shipyards. The message was simple: activate all reserves. Full mobilization. Authority level 7. He stared at the words on his screen. Level 7 authorization had never been used. It meant total war preparation with no restrictions on resources or methods. Kim looked out at the supposedly decommissioned ships floating in the lunar yards. Ships the galaxy thought were scrapped metal. Sir, his aide appeared beside him. The crews are asking about the activation order. Some of these ships have been mothballed for 30 years. Tell them to work faster, Kim replied. We have 6 months to remember how to be human. Dr. Yoon Sora worked in a laboratory that officially did not exist. Her research into alien psychology had been classified above top secret for good reason. She understood how other species thought, and more importantly, how they failed to understand human thinking. The key is their age, she explained to a room full of military officers. Most council species measure their history in millions of years. They move slowly, think carefully, and plan for centuries. They cannot comprehend a species that adapts and changes within a single generation. A general raised his hand. But surely they have studied us. They know our capabilities. Sora smiled coldly. They know what we have shown them. Chemical rockets, metal bullets, simple computers. They have never seen what we can do when we stop pretending to be primitive. Across the solar system, humanity began to reveal its true nature. The generation ships that had carried humans to the stars were pulled from storage and retrofitted with technology that made the galaxy's experts look like children playing with toys. Weapons based on principles that other species had dismissed as impossible were installed in cargo bays. AI systems that could think faster than any organic brain came online. In the asteroid belt, miners received new orders. Instead of extracting metals for trade, they began carving out massive hidden bases. Ships that looked like ordinary cargo. Haulers were fitted with sensors that could map enemy positions from light years away. Captain Cho Hyunsu stood on the bridge of what appeared to be a simple transport vessel. Inside, it contained technology that could disrupt quantum communications across half the galaxy. Are the other ships ready? He asked his crew. All vessels report ready. Sir, the Council will never see us coming. Good. Remember, we are not trying to destroy them. We are teaching them to respect us. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While the galaxy expected humanity to either submit quietly or make some desperate military strike, humans prepared to do something no species had ever attempted. They would demonstrate their true capabilities without firing a single shot. Every major trade route in Council space was mapped and studied. Every critical junction where commerce flowed was identified. Every weakness in the galactic economy was catalogued and prepared for exploitation. The Council species thought in terms of military conquest and territorial control. They prepared for war by building bigger weapons and stronger shields. They had never faced an enemy that understood the true power of economic warfare. Park stood in his command center, watching reports flow in from across human space. Ships were moving into position. Personnel were trained and ready. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their numbers, it was their refusal to fight fair. Send the message to all fleet commanders, Park ordered. Operation begins in 72 hours. Show them what happens when they forget who we are. The young species was about to remind their elders that age meant nothing without wisdom. And wisdom came from understanding your enemy better than they understood themselves. Humanity had spent 2 centuries learning how the galaxy worked. Now it was time to teach the galaxy how humans worked. Captain Cho Hyensu watched his navigation display as his ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler trade route. The massive cargo ships, moving between star systems, looked like slow-moving whales in the darkness of space. His vessel, disguised as a simple research craft, took position exactly where it would be most visible to passing traffic. All stations report ready, Captain, his communications officer announced. We are receiving confirmation signals from the other positions. CH Joe nodded. Across the galaxy, hundreds of human ships were doing exactly the same thing. They appeared at every major trade junction, every important shipping lane, every critical point where the galaxy's commerce flowed like blood through arteries. But they did not attack. They did not threaten. They simply watched. The first merchant vessel to notice Cho's ship was a Zephyrian cargo hauler carrying rare metals to the core worlds. The alien captain sent a standard identification request, which Cho answered politely. This is the research vessel, Earthsong. We are conducting scientific observations in international space. What kind of observations? The Zephyrian captain demanded. We are studying traffic patterns and commercial flow dynamics. Very boring academic work, I assure you. The cargo ship continued on its way, but Cho noticed it had increased speed. Within an hour, his sensors detected 3 more merchant vessels, changing course to avoid his position. By the end of the day, the Kepler route had dropped to 30% of normal traffic. Similar reports came in from human ships positioned throughout Council space. The mere presence of watching human vessels was enough to make alien captains nervous. Insurance companies began demanding higher premiums for ships traveling routes where humans had been spotted. Cargo owners started delaying shipments rather than risk unknown dangers. The Merchant Guild of Andromeda was the first to panic. Their emergency meeting was held just 4 days after the human ships appeared. Guildmaster Veltar, a being that looked like a cross between a spider and a businessman, addressed the assembly with obvious frustration. We are losing billions of credits every day, he announced. Commercial traffic has dropped 70% across all major routes. Ship captains refuse to carry cargo when those human vessels are watching. But they have not attacked anyone, pointed out another guild member. They claim to be conducting research. Research, Veltar S. Multiple arms waved in agitation. They appear at every critical junction in the galaxy on the same day, and we are supposed to believe it is coincidence. They are demonstrating that they can strangle our economy without firing a shot. The panic spread quickly. Stock markets across Council space began crashing as investors realized the implications. If humanity could control trade routes, they controlled everything. Food, medicine, raw materials, manufactured goods, all of it moved along the same paths that human ships now monitored. Ambassador Lee Minho received the first official complaint from the Galactic Council within a week. The message came from the Zephyrian Chancellor himself, and the tone was very different from their last conversation. Ambassador Lee, the Council demands an explanation for your species' aggressive positioning of military vessels throughout Council space. This action threatens galactic commerce and stability. Lee responded with perfect diplomatic courtesy. Honored Chancellor, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. Those are research vessels conducting peaceful scientific studies. The Galactic Council has always supported academic freedom and the pursuit of knowledge. Research vessels do not need to position themselves at every major trade route simultaneously. With respect, Honored Chancellor, the study of galactic commerce requires observation of actual commercial activity. Our scientists are simply gathering data on traffic patterns, shipping frequencies, and economic flow dynamics. All perfectly legal under galactic law. The Chancellor's next message came just hours later. What do you want, human? Lee's response was measured and calm. We want what we have always wanted, to be treated as equals rather than amusing curiosities. When the Council is ready to discuss fair treatment for humanity, these research projects can be concluded. The real impact became clear when the quarterly economic reports came in. The galactic economy had contracted by 15% in just 2 weeks. Critical supplies were stuck in warehouses because ship captains refused to transport them. The medical supplies needed by the crystal beings of Nexus 7 could not reach them. The food shipments that fed the gas giant colonies were sitting in orbital storage. Dr. Yun Sora monitored the situation from her hidden laboratory on Earth. Her psychological profiles of the Council species had predicted exactly this response. They are creatures of routine and comfort, she explained to Director Park. They have lived for so long without real threats that they have forgotten how to function under pressure. And the economic damage? Park asked. Exceeding projections. They built their entire civilization around the assumption that trade routes are safe and predictable. We have shown them how fragile that assumption really is. The breaking point came when the Crystalline Collective's homeworld began experiencing power shortages. The energy crystals they needed came from mining operations 3-star systems away. But the transport ships refused to make the journey, with human vessels watching every move. The Council's emergency session was called for the following week, but this time, they were not dismissing human requests. They were begging for negotiations. Captain Cho received new orders as he maintained his position at the Kepler Junction. Maintain current stance until further notice. They are beginning to understand. He smiled as he watched another cargo ship change course to avoid his area. Humanity had learned an important lesson about galactic politics. Sometimes, the best way to win a fight was to never throw a punch. The emergency council session convened in chaos. Trade routes across the galaxy remained paralyzed, and the economic damage was climbing toward catastrophic levels. Species that had laughed at humanity just weeks ago now whispered nervously about their empty supply ships and failing commerce networks. The Zephyrian Chancellor stood at the center of the Great Dome, his skin flickering between angry red and worried purple. This session will address the human crisis that threatens our entire civilization, he announced. We expect their representative to present reasonable terms for ending this economic terrorism. The council members settled into their seats, expecting to see Ambassador Lee Minho enter through the diplomatic entrance. Instead, the main doors opened to reveal a woman in crisp military uniform, walking with the confident stride of someone who had never lost a battle. Admiral Song Myung stepped into the center of the dome and looked around at the assembled species with calm measuring eyes. Behind her walked Colonel Bae Sujin, carrying a data case that seemed to make several council members nervous. Honored Council, Admiral Song began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. I am Admiral Song Myung, Commanding Officer of Human Defense Forces. I am here to correct some dangerous misunderstandings about my species. The Chancellor's colors flashed irritated orange. We did not summon a military representative. We expected your diplomat to discuss terms for ending your blockade of our trade routes. There is no blockade, Song replied smoothly. Our vessels are conducting legitimate research in international space. However, since you have concerns about human activities, perhaps it is time you understood exactly what those activities entail. She gestured to Colonel Bae, who activated a holographic projector. The dome filled with images of star systems, battle maps, and data streams that made the council members lean forward in their seats. For the past 123 years, Sung continued, humanity has been actively preventing galactic wars through careful intervention. We have saved approximately 2.3 billion sentient lives across 47 star systems. The first image showed the Vorthan-Kalari border conflict that had ended mysteriously 15 years ago. The Vorthan Empire was preparing to commit genocide against the Kalari population. Their battle plans called for the destruction of 6 inhabited worlds. The conflict ended when key Vorthan military leaders suffered unexpected accidents, and supply lines were disrupted by unknown forces. A creature that looked like a metal tree swayed in disbelief. You are claiming responsibility for ending that war. We are claiming responsibility for preventing that genocide, Song corrected. Human operatives working under false identities eliminated the war leaders and destroyed the weapons stockpiles. The Kalari people still exist because we intervened. The next image showed economic data from the Crystalline Collective's territory. 3 years ago, your people faced resource shortages that would have led to the collapse of your entire civilization. You believe the crisis ended due to lucky discoveries of new mining sites. The collective speaker chimed in metallic tones. Those discoveries were verified by our own scientists. Colonel Bae stepped forward. The discoveries were real, but they were not accidents. Human traders had been secretly maintaining supply lines to your outer territories for decades. When the crisis hit, we simply revealed the stockpiles we had been building for exactly this situation. The dome filled with murmurs of shock and disbelief. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive children were learning they had been protected by those same children for over a century. The Andromedan plague that killed millions before mysteriously stopping. The song continued. Human medical researchers developed the cure and distributed it through untraceable channels. The pirate fleets that terrorized the Outer Rim before vanishing. Human military units eliminated them in operations that were never acknowledged. The evidence continued for nearly an hour. Wars prevented, disasters averted, crises resolved. In every case, humanity had worked in secret to protect galactic civilization, while being dismissed as irrelevant by those they saved. Why? The question came from a gas-based being whose voice sounded like wind through crystals. Why protect species that consider you inferior? Song's expression softened slightly. Because protecting others is what humans do. We learned long ago that strength is not measured by the ability to destroy, but by the willingness to preserve. We have been the guardians you never knew you needed. The Chancellor's colors had shifted to confused blue. If this is true, why reveal it now? Why not continue your secret protection? Because Song replied, we are tired of being treated as children while doing the work of adults. We have earned our place in this council, not through conquest or age, but through service. We are offering you a choice. Accept us as equals, or learn to protect yourselves. The implications hung in the air, like a physical weight. The galaxy's secret protectors were demanding recognition, and they had already demonstrated their ability to cripple galactic civilization whenever they chose. A small, lizard-like being in the back of the dome raised a clawed hand. What guarantee do we have that you will continue protecting us if we grant you equal status? Song smiled for the first time since entering the dome. You have the same guarantee you have always had. Humanity's nature has not changed. We will continue to protect those who cannot protect themselves because that is who we are. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we will no longer do so in silence, and we will no longer accept being dismissed as primitive by those we save. The council chamber fell silent as the galaxy's leaders realized they faced a choice that would reshape their entire civilization. The children had grown up, and they were demanding their rightful place at the adult table. The Great Dome of Nexus Prime had never been so quiet. For nearly an hour, the assembled representatives of 847 species sat in stunned silence, processing the revelations Admiral Song had presented. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Humanity had been the galaxy's invisible guardian for over a century. The Zephyrian Chancellor was the first to break the silence. His skin had shifted to a pale yellow that indicated deep thought and uncertainty. The Council must vote on how to respond to these revelations, he announced, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. A creature that resembled a floating jellyfish pulsed with nervous light. How do we vote on something like this? They have been protecting us without our knowledge. They could have demanded tribute, conquered territories, or enslaved entire populations. Instead, they worked in secret to save lives. The metal tree being swayed as it spoke. But they also demonstrated they can destroy our economy without firing a shot. Are we voting under threat or genuine choice? Admiral Song remained standing in the center of the dome, her posture relaxed but alert. The Council is voting on reality, she said calmly. We have shown you who we really are. Now you must decide how you want to proceed with that knowledge. Colonel Bay activated another holographic display. While you deliberate, perhaps you should know that 17 different crises are currently developing across Council space. A plague is beginning on Kepler 7. Pirates are massing near the vegan trade routes. 2 species are moving toward war over mining rights in the Centauri cluster. The dome erupted in concerned chatter as representatives recognized threats to their own territories. The Chancellor raised his arms for silence. Are you saying these crises exist because you stopped preventing them? No, Song replied. We are saying these crises always exist. We simply handle them before they become visible to you. The question is whether you want us to continue doing so as equals, or whether you prefer to handle them yourselves while treating us as primitives. A blob-like creature gurgled nervously. But if you stop helping, millions could die. Then perhaps, Song said quietly, you should consider whether dismissing us as children is worth those lives. The vote was called 6 hours later. The debate had been intense, with species arguing over humanity's methods, their secrecy, and the implications of their revelations. Some complained about being manipulated. Others worried about becoming dependent on human protection. A few demanded guarantees and treaties. The final tally was displayed across the dome in glowing numbers. 743 in favor. 104 opposed. The motion to grant humanity a permanent seat on the Council's high command had passed by an overwhelming margin. Ambassador Lee Minho entered the dome to accept the position formally. He had been waiting outside during the deliberations, and his calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the nervous energy still rippling through the assembly. Humanity accepts this responsibility with gratitude and humility, Lee said, as he took his place at the high command table. We seek partnership, not dominion. We have spent our entire history learning to survive against impossible odds, and we prefer to use those skills protecting the galaxy rather than conquering it. The Chancellor's colors had stabilized to a respectful blue-green. What assurances can you give that humanity will continue its protective activities? Lee smiled slightly. The same assurance we have always given, honored Chancellor. Our actions, we will continue to do what we have always done because protecting others is part of our nature. The only difference is that now you know we are doing it. Within days of the vote, requests began flooding in from across the galaxy. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence suddenly wanted human advisors, peacekeepers, and strategic consultants. The Crystalline Collective asked for help with their resource management. The gas beings of the Spiral Arm requested assistance with their territorial disputes. Director Park watched the reports from his command center on Earth. The transformation was remarkable. Humanity had gone from galactic outcasts to the most sought-after allies in Council space within a single week. Sir, his aide reported, we have received over 300 formal requests for human assistance. Military advisors, diplomatic mediators, economic planners, medical researchers, everyone wants our help now. Park nodded thoughtfully. Schedule meetings with the most critical cases. First, and make sure our people understand that we are partners now, not servants. We help because we choose to, not because we are ordered. 2. The change in galactic dynamics was profound. Trade routes reopened as human research vessels withdrew from their monitoring positions. Economic confidence returned as markets realized that humanity's intervention had been protective rather than threatening. Species that had never spoken to each other began cooperating under human mediation. Admiral Song established the new Galactic Peacekeeping Division with representatives from multiple species working alongside human officers. The days of secret operations were over. Humanity's protective role was now official and acknowledged. 6 months after the vote, Ambassador Lee stood in the same dome where humanity had been dismissed and humiliated. But now, he occupied a position at the high command table, and when he spoke, the galaxy listened. The Council recognizes the representative from Earth, the Chancellor announced with genuine respect. Lee rose and looked around the dome at the assembled species. Humanity wishes to propose a joint training program for galactic peacekeeping forces. We believe every species has unique strengths that can contribute to protecting our shared civilization. The proposal passed unanimously. As the session ended, Lee reflected on how completely everything had changed. The galaxy had learned that true strength came not from age or technology, but from the wisdom to protect rather than dominate. And humanity had finally found its rightful place among the stars.